Samsara is, in a simplest explanation, it's a spiritual love story for me. It's a story of a quest. And this story, of course, is told through the character of Tashi, who is a Buddhist monk in a monastery high up in the Himalaya, in region of Ladakh. And he sort of questions his own monastic existence. He questions what he's being taught in the monastery, and he sort of decides to renounce the monastic life in order to go and live samsaric life, which is the life in the world. And of course, this desire is driven by some of his attraction towards materialistic things. He was also attracted to a woman who is farmer's daughter in the village during a harvest ceremony. He himself has been witnessing certain turmoil in his own life. He had certain wet dream, and so mix of quite a few things. He leaves the monastery and he lives like a normal layman. He becomes a farmer. One day again he questions his own existence again in samsara, and he probably wants to return to the monastery, and well, the rest is surprise what happens.
I think it's the human role, and that's what really attracted me about it. I think a lot of the roles that I see are two-dimensional. I think this character is really interesting. I think it's like the life of this film, and the character of this film it's a struggle. It's just a struggle you stumble your way through life from beginning to end. You try to make the right decisions, and you try to do things that make sense, and that's sort of how the making of this film has been.
It's the story of a woman, who is Tashi's lover, Pema, who becomes later his wife. Pema also is seeking in a very subtle way, maybe the same thing, but she doesn't do any of the religious practice. She's living in the world with children, housewife, but she also has acquired certain wisdom by living in the world, by being constantly in contact and in touch with life, with children, with nature. She also has another kind of understanding of life, and sort of two ideas come together as a conflict and resolve hopefully into something.
In this movie, my character is Pema, and she's a wonderful woman, extraordinary soul, a beautiful soul. She's a village girl, but the way of thinking, she is much more advanced, much more flexible in the way of adapting herself in life, which I think samsara means the cycle of life. It's a love story between Tashi and Pema, and it assimilates with life, what people are going through, and at the end of it, that's life.
I think the most amazing thing for me to see was how great all the actors are being. Besides Sean, of course, he's completely wonderful. He's completely amazing, and he's giving such a great Tashi. Besides him, all the unprofessional actors, I call it unprofessional actors because a lot of them never acted before. I thought that this is going to be very difficult, and we have to do a lot of retakes, and you always there's no guarantee, but I have to say all of them are completely fantastic, including the kids, and all of them are really great. They completely focus, and I think this is going to add to the film a very, very special note. It's not a German film, a French film, an Indian film. The whole story is very universal, and hopefully this film is gonna get shown all over the world. So I feel it's quite natural that people from different countries are coming together and want to make that film.
Very simply, for me, the simplest meaning is the best, the world we live in. One of the biggest challenge in Samsara was, as far as cinematography was concerned, then it's exceptionally beautiful. Our problem was how to de-beautify, or how do we find a balance that. So first thing I did was I had a lot of establishing shot. I took them out all in the screenplay, and they were all converted into sort of emotional value, into point of view shot. Like when Tashi comes to the monastery and when he looks at the monastery for the first time. We see through his point of view. The moment we didn't make a point of view shot, they look like picture postcard, So we sort of decided to make I had made a color up palette that how the film will follow its evolution, spiritual evolution of main character as the story unfolds. So we decided to sort of, for the cinematography and for the sound, that the first part we will not have any green in the movie. We'll only concentrate on the faraway monastery with brown landscape high up in the hill, and all the sound will be very cold wind, no birds, nothing, and only green which Tashi will look in the first part would be one green leaf he looks, when he comes out of monastery. And then one day when he goes to the village, he crosses one solitary tree. That's almost like a frontier between the high hill and the valley. And once you saw the green color, we brought in the sounds of samsara, the world, the children, the yak, the farms, the life. Suddenly it fills in the soundtrack. So with the green, we sort of try to use and make the emotional, like the location casting we did almost like the human casting we did for the film. So we try to integrate that and make them as human so that they also tell the story. So every time we cross the tree, straight away the film gets filled with this sound, and you see much more green. And as he lives his life in the village and slowly he matures and he becomes father, you see the village sort of losing its green and going towards autumn. And the contrast between monastic life and samsaric green is reducing, and when he becomes a monk again, it's autumn, it's full yellow, and which is once again a color of enlightenment. So in a way, we chose this color palette, we chose accordingly the sound design to construct and weave the beauty of Ladakh, and we made sure that we don't use any music which will narrate the landscape and add to all that. We made sure that we use very organic sounds. We use instruments which have some kind of spiritual history, in different religion. There are instruments from Armenia which are known for its link with time of Jesus Christ, Armenian duduk. We use Japanese niel, which is used by Zen monk in 14th century. So we try to find these sources which use which create another dimension to the image. I don't know how far it is successful, but that was intentional to create that kind of mood and ambience in the film. So that when you look at the landscape, they become some kind of a discovery as much as it's for the character, and the same for the audience as well. Yeah. Ladakh, yes, Ladakh is one of the most difficult district to access in India. I mean, all the way up to 1976, it was closed for everyone. So there is, it's high up in the Himalaya. On an average, we shot at 15,000 feet altitude. So we had all kind of problems of altitude sickness, infrastructure, no electricity, telephone, to bring all the crew, the equipment. But this is something which I knew, so we were preparing ourselves. But then there is nothing like when you actually start doing it, So there are things which we were prepared for, but there are also things which we were not prepared for. Things like Ladakh is politically a part of state of Jammu and Kashmir. So some of the Kashmiri militant had gunned down some monks, and there was a curfew and shoot at sight order. So we were stuck 6-7 days in our base camp. And it is one of those most frustrating moments that you have waited 7 years to get the crew, cast, everyone, and you have the film stock and camera and you cannot shoot. And little later, when we just started shooting, our base camp was flooded. That river never gets flooded, but in 100 years later, it decides to flood the camp. So the beginning was very tough. We could only shoot 4 to 5 or sometimes 6 hours a day because of high altitude and lack of oxygen. People will be exhausted after they work 5 hours. So slowly we have to add every day 1 hour into the schedule to come to a normal working hour.
One major difficulty is the altitude, because we're at sort of 12,500 feet here, and certainly it takes a week or so to acclimatise.
It's a really new place for us, new location, new experience, new people, new culture. Everything is new. First 2-3 days we have it's normal, some communication problem, little bit. But after that everything was going very well.
From a production point of view, it's completely something which you can't control. Very often there's nothing you can do with it and you can only go with it. So the reaction to it is only to keep going and to be flexible. And I think that's something what, if you're talking about me, I learned about that film. It's like we're having a schedule and we're having a plan, but we have to keep in mind we have to be all flexible. And I'm thinking this was every department had to be flexible in all ways of how you work, that certain things are not available, okay, then we have to find an alternative. And I think your mind has to be very flexible and very open to other things. And I think everybody was, including Nalin, production design department. I think every department is had to learn to be flexible and to be more open to other things and actually to work with the situation as it is.
Tonight we had having this scene for SAMSARA, you know, filmed by Nalin, and it's produced by Pandora, and we have this huge fire. It's gonna be magnificent. We have people, all stunts, all pyrotechnic men from Bombay.
There are about 8 fields where the fire will be, and the fire is distributed in the dry wheat fields. We put the dry grass. The water sources have been put in about 5 places. All the ADs are placed. The production people are placed. The crowd blocking has also happened. Right now we're just waiting to do a meeting so that we can brief everybody.
It's exciting. It's exciting to do something. It's exciting to beat down a fire and really be in a fire. I mean, you can't act like you're in a fire. You have to be in the fire, I think.
This movie, without looking at the rushes, without nothing, it's just a feeling. It's just so beautiful. Even the audience, they could just watch the movie without the sound and they'd be just flabbergasted. They'll be just blown out of their mind because it's so beautiful. And at the end of the day, this is such a beautiful love story, is it?
It's definitely a story for the big screen.
I hope that a wider audience can extrapolate that to their own lives. I think there are enough people out there who can.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fantastic film, I think, and very unique, and I'm thinking also very different to all other films already made in such a setting.
I think it's going to go far. I mean, everyone who's worked on this is very skillful, and it's such a different film.
Because samsara is the cycle of life. It goes around and round and round and round, and you won't miss it.